Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello. Our sabbatical's over. This is Kathy, and I am going to be your host for this episode of our podcast. And I just want to give you a little lay of the land of the podcast today. So I'm super excited to be back. Haven't recorded a podcast episode in a long time because we've been recycling some of our juicy good episodes from before, taking it a little slow this summer, as I hope you all did as well. And so I want to kind of give the lay of the land to today's podcast. So I'm going to start with a little short reflection on how our company sabbatical went, and just a little bit of catching you up and helping you know what to expect for the next season of the podcast. And then I'm going to dig into something that maybe has been on your mind, which is recession-proofing your career. First, I'm going to talk about recession-proofing your career. I've got 3 keys to recession-proofing your career, things that you can do. And then for the last part of the podcast, I'm going to talk about recession-proofing your career from your university's perspective. So first I'm going to talk from your perspective, and then I'm going to talk about, things from your university's perspective. And all of this is to kind of get us warmed up for starting many of us, right, are starting what you might call a fall semester, or we used to just call it first semester 2022, 2023 or something like that, because of course in the tropics, we don't say fall and spring. But anyway, I am so excited to dig in to this podcast episode. So let's get started with some announcements and reflections. So as many of you know, if you're subscribed to our email list, we took a whole company sabbatical for the first 4 weeks of August. So what that means is that we didn't deliver any programming during that time. And what we wanted to do with this was a couple of things, right? One thing we wanted to do was model taking a full break, which I'm going to tell you my experience, as maybe you could guess, was harder for me than I thought it was going to be for lots of reasons. So I'll get into that in a minute. But we took a full break. Literally everyone in the company set an email responder to, hey, I'm on sabbatical and I'll answer your questions when we get back in the last week of August. And we didn't interact on Slack, except just a couple of tiny things. Some people shared things in our little water cooler company channel, but we really left each other alone for the first 4 weeks of August, except we did something that was really, really fun, which was in that first week of August, we took 2 days and we rented a mansion that I found on Airbnb, because I was looking for a place near Washington, D.C. that would have enough bedrooms for our whole team, because I don't want anybody sharing bedrooms, And sometimes when you go on Airbnb and you look for a house with a lot of rooms, maybe you're going to have a family gathering, or maybe you're traveling in a big group or something. And maybe none of these things. I do this often because I think about doing writing retreats or team retreats and trying to find a good space for it. And a lot of times you go onto Airbnb and it's beautiful bedroom number 1, beautiful bedroom number 2. Bedroom number 3 has 2 bunk beds or 6 bunk beds in it, And that was not this. This was a beautiful mansion. We all had our own rooms, and we hired a personal chef, and we hired makeup and hair artists, and we hired a photographer. And we had a lovely time. And my coach, Natalie Miller, came and did a workshop for us as well. So we spent 2 days together having a really lovely time, meeting each other in person, because there were members of the team that I had never met in person. And there were definitely members of the team that had never met each other in person. So it was really fun. It was a nice bonding time. It was relaxing. It was delicious. We laughed a lot because we did these photos. And of course, like that process made us silly by the end. And we just had a really, really lovely time. So that is how we spent the first week of the sabbatical, well, 2 days of that week. And it was really great. And part of the reason that we wanted to do that, or that I wanted to do that as the leader of our team, is that, as I think I mentioned maybe last January on like the first podcast back from the holiday break, I think I mentioned that you're going to be seeing a shift in our company so that it's less just me, right? And more about all of us. And part of that shift is that we are going to be renaming our company. So I'm not quite ready to reveal our new company name yet, but you will be seeing it very soon. And I'm thinking of the next semester, actually, until the end of 2022, as kind of like a transition from a public transition, because inside this transition has been happening for a while. And now what we're trying to do is match our outward image and our outward brand and our outward messaging to be what it is on the inside, which is everybody, all the coaches and all the team members contributing to creating and delivering the programs, not just me, right? And that's been happening for a long time. But since I've been the voice on the podcast, the company is named Kathy Mazak LLC. You know, it's been it started out as just me, but it's not just me anymore. And so we're trying to rebrand to reflect how our company really is, which is a diverse group of, right now, women delivering programs to you all and really trying to inspire through this podcast and our newsletter and the other things we do kind of publicly or for free. So I think in that January kind of New Year's podcast, I said, you're going to be hearing the coaches so much more and everything. So that's something that's been harder than I thought. So if any of you have a podcast or know about podcasting, people who podcast, like it's no big deal for me to like do a solo episode like this. Like I really have it down. But for people new to podcasting, which all of our coaches are, it is not that easy. And then it's not just them either. It's us on the back end, the process for getting the audio files to the editor and all of these things that happen before the podcast comes out got way clunkier when we tried to coordinate it with more than one podcast host. So what we decided to do is give ourselves a little breathing room. That's part of the reason that we were recycling episodes this summer. So give ourselves a little breathing room. And originally I was like, it's going to be every week a different host. So it's going to be me one week, and then it'll be Rocio, and then it'll be Thea, and then it'll be Gina, and we'll just keep rotating through. But we're going to slow that pace down, especially in this next semester, as we're doing a lot of work to transition to our new company name and our new branding. And we'll just have one episode per month will be by a different host. So we'll rotate through. I think Gina's up first. So we're going to be, and we're just like trying to give ourselves grace around doing something that we've never done before. And that maybe is a little harder than I originally thought from the logistics standpoint. So I'm still promising that you're going to hear more voices. You heard a great episode from Thea this summer about non-binary academics. And, you know, you've heard the coaches talk on interviews with clients. And sometimes like we've had the coaches together just talking about, okay, what are our clients going through right now? So you've heard them here before, but don't worry. We're taking it little by little, and we're going to be adding more episodes that are hosted by our whole team. And you'll see a gradual kind of like a somewhat receding of my voice being super loud and everybody else's voice turning up in volume. So that's part of what you can expect from the podcast in the next few months. One last thing before I get into the 3 keys to recession-proof your career. I want to say just a little reflection so that I remember about how the sabbatical was for me. So the compelling thing about a sabbatical for me was to not be scheduled. So before the sabbatical, I felt kind of like I had a lot of meetings. I ended up coming in and doing a lot of the delivery in the programs, and it just felt like really rushed, and like I didn't have the time to do things that I really needed to do as the CEO of the company. And I was like, this is going to be great because it's going to be 4 weeks and I'm not going to be scheduled. And that was pretty much true. My kids started school. My daughter had some health problems that needed doctor's appointments and tests and things like that. So it wasn't unscheduled, right? It wasn't. In fact, this is the 4th week of the sabbatical when I'm recording this episode. And this is the least scheduled week. Today is very scheduled. I really only have 2 unscheduled days left. So what I learned though, or what I want to say, that maybe if you are trying to take time off, like fully off, something that I realized is that to get to the point where I'm fully off, it took longer than I thought. And I bet this happens, or I kind of remember this happening from when I was still a professor in the summers, right? I would be like, summers off, blank days. But it wouldn't be like that. And it wouldn't get like that until maybe the end of July. And only if I was like really, really pushing for that to happen. There's this like trickle over of things that I think like overflows into your time off, that the next time we do a sabbatical, which will be next August, the same way, I want to make sure that I'm more mindful about that. And what I did this time was like, it's okay. You know, this is the first time I've done a sabbatical. I wasn't sure how I was going to react or what was going to happen. And so it wasn't without work, which I actually, for me and my sabbatical, I didn't want it to be without work. I wanted it to be without being scheduled. So I wanted to do some work projects that needed like some space in them, like working on the Amplify syllabus and working on our Amplify kickoff retreat and doing some branding work, messaging and that kind of stuff that's writing actually. So, so that's my reflection. Next time I do it, like I need to remember that there's like a transition period where there's overflow and maybe it's not quite so calm and blank days as I want. And that's okay. And also maybe there's some things I could do to get to these unscheduled days a little earlier in the 4-week sabbatical. So those are my reflections there. So another thing that happened, or one of the things that the spaciousness of the sabbatical did help me think about was, you know, what everybody's talking about on the news and all the scary headlines about recession. Are we headed into recession? Are we not? How bad is it going to be? Like inflation, and blah, 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 blah. So I thought, you know, and another thing, and I'll just be completely honest, we have our Amplify program, which is our right now the tagline on the program is pre-tenure faculty writing accelerator. I think we'll be changing that tag because it really is like a pre-tenure prep program. I don't like that either. It's really a career building program. And it is where we teach a really core concept in our programs, which is, I call it career design. I think the literature calls it job craft. So you can Google it. And what that means is very intentionally shaping your career into what you want it to be, despite any constraints that you might either appear to have or actually have on your career, really leaning into your agency and figuring out how you can make your job be what you really want it to be. So that is what career design is, or job craft in the literature about this. And that is really the core of the Amplify program. Of course, a lot of it has to do with writing. And that is going to come up right now when I talk about the 3 keys to recession-proofing your career. The reason I mentioned Amplify, though, is that last year, I think we enrolled 25 people. And then we had maybe 5 or 6 people who were holdovers from before, when Amplify was a year-long program. So now it's a 6-month program that runs September through February. So I was like, well, we'll probably enroll 30 people. Transparency, we have not enrolled 30 people. We have enrolled 17 people, which is fabulous. I'm super excited about every single one of them. And we got a lot of applications that were accepted, but people didn't enroll. So we had a lot of interest in the program. And then we had a good amount of applications, but we didn't enroll all the people who we accepted. And I started to think and talk to actually my kind of academic coach, business friends about this. And one of the things we're thinking was like, well, maybe part of it is the recession. People are holding on to their money because they are afraid of what's going to happen in the next academic year. And then there's another part too, which I'm going to talk about, which is like, maybe you're afraid to ask for funds because of the recession, because you're just afraid you're just going to get a no. And what are you thinking? We're headed into a recession and you're asking to spend all this money on a program. So I wanted to talk, that's what inspired me to talk about recession-proofing your career, because I think it's a mindset shift that all of us need to make about, well, what does it take in this absolutely stressful, overworky, racist, ableist, patriarchy, culture of academia system that we're in? Like, what would it take to recession-proof your career? Like, how can you build a cocoon around yourself so that even when the economy is bad or some other thing is happening, but let's say not some other thing. When the economy is bad, you feel confident that you're not going to lose your job unless you want to. So with that said, let's hop into the second part of this 3-part podcast, which is 3 keys to recession-proofing your career. All right. Key number 1. Are you ready? Key number 1 is dissociate your career decisions from your institution's tenure and promotion requirements. Yep, that sounds counterintuitive, right? I'm telling you that instead of making sure you meet your institution's tenure and promotion requirements, I'm telling you to actually pull apart your career decision-making from your university's TNP requirements. So how is that logical? Let me explain. If your approach to getting tenure or promotion starts with the information your institution provides you, you're starting at the wrong place. And this is where I want to get into this idea of career design. Your career should be designed by you, not just based on, I'm going to check my institution's boxes. First of all, you might not get a list of boxes, right? Like, you probably don't have a clear list of tenure and promotion requirements. You're guessing, right? There's not a clear list for most people. Unless you're unionized, it is not a cut and dry, clear list. So you're looking at who got promoted before you, you're looking at what the university's telling you, and you're trying to divine what you need to do to get promoted. And what I want you to do, sure, you can think about that, but that's not how you base your decision making. And this is what we teach in Amplify. We want you to base your decision making on what you want for your career, on what your academic mission is, on what the milestones that you want to hit, not tenure and promotion as a milestone, although that could be one, but what are the milestones you want to achieve or reach across the trajectory of your career, right? What's the impact that you want to make? Who are the people that you want to affect? How do you want to feel in your own job? Those are motivators of decisions. What your university is saying you have to do to get promoted shouldn't be the motivator of your decisions. Now, why? What sense does this make, right? Let me say this. You might be thinking, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast, I think, fall into this category. I'm not a traditional academic. I am different. I want different things than what the academy wants. And what I'm saying is, that's what you should pursue then. You should be pursuing with whole energy behind figuring out how you want to do academia differently and then doing that. And you might be thinking, yeah, but I'm not going to be successful in the system unless I learn the system and do the system. Okay. Also, lots of people learn the system and do the system and are still not successful in it and are actually super unhappy. So you can follow all the rules. You can master the system with capital letters, right? And you can still be denied tenure. And I'm not saying that to freak you out. I'm saying it because that's real. So I think that you're pretty amazing. And so be amazing. Be your amazing self. So for example, in Amplify, we teach a process for securing tenure that starts with your academic mission and really grows from there. It comes from inside of you. It doesn't come from your institution's tenure and promotion requirements, right? You focus on yourself. You focus on your goals. You focus on your values, your unique contribution. When you do that, that is going to have a much bigger payoff in your career and in your life than trying to check the boxes that your institution might not even have written down on a paper for you, right? And so that's how you make your work bigger than your current academic position. Even if you stay in your current academic position, the work becomes bigger than that. It becomes more impactful. So key number 1, dissociate your career decisions from your institution's tenure and promotion requirements. Build your self-trust. Consult your inner mentor. These are 2 things that we work really hard on in our programs, especially in Amplify. And build your career, make those career decisions motivated by those things, listening to those things, not listening just to what your university says. When you do that, you're going to check all those boxes. It's going to be great. But you shouldn't just be pursuing what the university says you should pursue. That's not the focus. Dissociate those 2 things. That is going to give you a career that can outlast a recession. Absolutely. It'll be a much more impactful and exciting and interesting career than a career based on decisions motivated by fear that you're going to lose your job. Yeah? Okay. Key number 2, build a CV that's aimed at mobility. So I'm going to tell a personal story here, but maybe a version of what you've heard on the podcast before. Universities have this illusion of permanence, but they are not permanent. Okay. So let me explain what I mean by this with my own personal situation. When I moved to Puerto Rico in 2005-06 and got a tenure track job at University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, I was like, I made it. I hit the big time. I got my tenure track job. My husband it took about a year, but then he got a tenure track job. We had in our contracts when we signed up, we had 2% cost of living raises every year. We had a few $100s every fall, just an extra few $100s to buy materials. It was a materials allowance. We had post-tenure sabbaticals, so that once you got tenure, you could apply and get a sabbatical. And when I was looking around at people's sabbaticals, I'm like, these sabbatical proposals aren't super, out of this world. This could really be something, that you could have a really nice, restful, and also inspiring and also productive, sabbatical based on what I was seeing other people doing. What else? We used to have course releases, a 4-4 load with my contract. And we used to have course releases just for writing and submitting a grant, not even for getting the grant. We used to be able to have a course release for that. We had course releases for being heads of committees. So when I was the chair of the graduate committee, would have a course release because that person would run our master's program. So there was all of these things that were like, that's what we came into. And then 2008 was the financial crisis, but Puerto Rico was in kind of decline before that and got much worse than the US in terms of the financial crisis, right? And we had the Ley Promesa later, many years later, and all, but it was like a decline. It was a decline over 15 years, probably. And it was like the university was tightening and tightening and tightening the budget. And we lost the cost of living, and we lost the materials allowance, and we lost the descargas, which are the course releases. And we tightened and tightened and tightened. So that ideal job that was like, this is going to be great, and we're going to be able to provide for our family with this money, and we're going to be able to have a house and 2 cars and the things we need to live here nicely and comfortably, started to get really hard, like really hard. And that's why I started blogging and I started coaching on the side, because we couldn't make ends meet with the salaries we had. So this is all to say that universities and tenure track jobs feel really permanent. It really feels like, oh, the university is never going to go away. And maybe your university won't dissolve, right? But maybe the job will become something so qualitatively different from what you signed up for that you don't want to be in that position anymore. So that is the reason that key number 2 to recession-proofing your career is to build a CV that's aimed at mobility. Think about what you might need to do to change institutions or to change careers even. But like here, we're talking about staying in academia. So you want to build a CV that whether you thought when you started your job, when I was a little idealistic, Kathy, in 2006, I never thought I would leave this job. I thought this job was for 30 years, 35 probably. And it just changed right out from under me. And it wasn't fun anymore. And it wasn't what I signed up for. Related to that, though, I will say, even before all of that happened, I always had a CV aimed at mobility. I always had a CV, that had grants on it, even though nobody was saying you have to write grants, that had pubs on it, even though nobody was saying you have to publish a certain amount. And the reason that I did that at that point in my life was because I was like, well, if something happens to my husband and I might want to move, either because he gets a new job and wants to move, or because something happens to him, he can't work and then I want to move. Like, if I want to, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't want anything bad to happen to your partner, but it happens, right? So it could happen. So I always wanted to build a CV that I could go and get another job with. So right now, I think that's how you should be thinking because of the recession. You don't know how the recession, it will definitely impact some schools worse than other schools. And so you don't know how it's going to feel at your university. So I think just for your own power, you need to have that really mobile CV. So what's a mobile CV? It's a CV with publications on it, right? So if you've been sitting on a stack of almost done articles that need to get out, if you've been like, oh, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z before I publish because these things seem pressing and the publishing doesn't, what we want to do here and the mission of our programs is to help you to center your writing so that you can build that CV and do it in a way that's not like, I'm going to need to frantically publish things. Absolutely not. If you listen to my other podcast episodes, you know that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is building a career on a solid foundation that you could go be a professor anywhere, almost anywhere that you want to be. So that's key number 2, build a CV aimed at mobility. If you are listening and you are interested in our Amplify program, as I just mentioned, We do have some spaces left. It is very late. We kind of put the deadline as last Friday when you're listening to this podcast. But if this podcast gets a fire under your butt and you're like, I need to get into that Amplify cohort, just write to us. Write to us at Kathy@KathyMazak.com or support@KathyMazak.com. And we'll let you know if there's still room for you in our Amplify program. All right. Build a CV aimed at mobility. Okay. This is getting long. All right. Key number three. Make career decisions that make you happy, because you are not going to last through rough times if you hate your job. Make career decisions that make you happy. So during a recession, a university can get to be like a really icky place to be, right? And those of you who lived through the financial crisis in 2008, if that affected your university a lot, maybe you remember, all of a sudden there's no paper. All of a sudden there used to be travel funds. There's not travel funds, or they're really tightening the reins on everything. And it can feel like the message you get from your higher ups all the time is like, don't spend money, don't ask. Don't spend money, don't ask, right? So because it can start to get uncomfortable and just not as pleasant when you are in an environment like that, when your university is freaking out, right? You need to make decisions that make you happy. You need to take that control of your career and really do this career design work that we teach in Amplify, so that you make the everyday life of being a professor pleasant, joyful, maybe. It's going to be stressful sometimes, of course, it's life. But you don't want to be like suffering through hating your job at the same time that you're in a recession. Because that feels so awful, because you want to like run in the opposite direction and you feel like, well, I can't because I'm too scared because we're in a recession, right? So make career decisions that make you happy. So teaching a certain course, make you happy or not happy. Start to use your own joy as criteria for decision making. Might not be the only criteria, of course, but like it should be in there. Because why? Why are we here if not to enjoy it, right? Enjoy our lives, enjoy our careers. We will be such better knowledge makers when we are enjoying the knowledge making and we are enjoying the career. So I want to say key number 3 to recession-proofing your career is to make career decisions that make you happy, okay? So those are my 3 keys. The first key, dissociate your career decisions from your institution's tenure and promotion requirements. The second key, build a CV that's aimed at mobility. And the third key, make career decisions that make you happy. All right. Now, the last part of this podcast episode, I want to talk about your career from the perspective of your university. Because maybe you heard those 3 things and you're like, that sounds nice, but they're going to get mad at me if I do that, And I want to switch that around in your mind. And I want you to understand that universities are also trying to recession-proof themselves. And what that means for you is that they need to retain you. They need to retain you, and you need to be happy. So from their perspective, that is recession-proofing their faculty, retaining. So let me explain a little bit about retention. Now, the reason I'm saying this is like, why should the university invest in your professional development? Because a recession's coming up and they need to retain you. Okay. And it's not like a perk. It's not like this is nice to have. Well, yay, professional development. No, they need to be actors in teaching you and supporting you in how to create the career that you want. Because if they're not doing that, then you are burning out and you are leaving. And if you change universities and you haven't done all the other work, you're going to have the same problem at a different university. If you don't learn career design, if you don't trust your inner mentor, all those things I just said, you might build your CV and move to another university and you're going to have the same problems that you had where you are. Because the change is actually about you. It's not about the container through which you're doing the work. The change is about you. It's not about the container through which you're doing the work. So I just want to say that to you. Back to the universities. Why do they need to retain you? They're going to lose way more if they lose more money, more dollars, if they don't retain you than they would the cost of these programs that we offer. So Amplify costs $8,000. It's an $8,000 program, 6 months, a lot of very individualized attention in the program. $8,000 is nothing. If you don't get tenure, your university has basically spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on you and lost you. And so even though a lot of times we're like, oh, the university, they're like mean and they're trying to deny us tenure, it's in their best interest to retain you, right? It's in their best interest to retain you. So not only are they losing the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they've paid you and that they've paid benefits for and all of those things, they're also then burdening their faculty further and losing money because they're overworking their support staff and the hiring committees and all of that to do a search. They're spending money on a search. It's very expensive to search. So one of the things that you might think about as you're thinking about recession-proofing your career is asking for professional development funding, telling the university, hey, this is a way that you can protect your investment in your faculty, is by supporting us with funding. And I'll say, in your email inboxes, probably this week, if you're on our email list, you're going to see our institutional partnerships offer, which is a new program that we are piloting. And we are looking to partner with institutions who understand that supporting their women and non-binary faculty extra creates equity. And other things, read the emails when they come. So basically, we will have an opportunity for your university or universities who want to partner with us to kind of bulk enroll people in our Navigate program. And there's a lot of other perks on the side, which could get you a free ticket into Amplify. So make sure you check your emails about this. But basically, that's the thing. Like, so many people are like afraid to ask their university for funding. Your university, the argument they need to hear from you is like, you are protecting a really rich investment by pouring money into supporting your faculty through excellent professional development programs. You are the exact people who your university needs to face the next phase of higher education and be successful, even though higher education is changing, even though more and more people are questioning, like, well, do I really need to do a degree in order to do this job that I want? And do I really want the same job for this many years? Like, just think about how 18-year-olds are thinking right now, 22-year-olds are thinking right now. It's already a different world than it was 20 years ago when I was a grad student. Like, the ship has sailed. So if your university wants to keep up, they need people like you. They need to retain you. They need to support you. They need you doing academia the way that you want, that makes sense in your life, that honors your humanity. That's what they need in order to evolve into what higher ed is going to be for the next 20 years. They need you. So they should invest in you. They should invest in you. I don't know if you saw that 2021 Chronicle of Higher Ed survey. One of the stats from it is that over a third of tenured faculty, so 35%, are considering leaving higher ed for another career. And 40% report low career satisfaction. That's a huge number. That's like almost half of the people out there saying like, yeah, not really satisfied with this. So how can universities contribute to making you more satisfied? They can fund you into top-notch professional development. Because as I said before, yes, should universities change? Should their policies change? Should the culture change? 100%, and that's what we're about. And I believe that the way we change the culture of academia is by supporting you in living out, in academicing the way that makes the most sense for you, that fills you with joy and happiness, that makes you a better knowledge maker. And that's all going to help your students be better and your relationships with each other be better. And that is how we start to change the culture of academia, by changing you, by coaching you to understand your agency to design your career. There you go. That's how our company thinks that we change the culture of academia, by coaching you to understand your agency in designing your career. And that, to me, is what great professional development does. That's our take on professional development. And that's what we want for you. So, a couple of things to think about. Remember, we are heading into a recession. If you hate your job, you're going to hate it more during a recession. So, we would love to teach you inside of our Amplify program. We would love to talk to you about career design there. And or pick up my book, which is now available on Amazon and bookstore.com and all of the places. The book is available on paper. That will help you as well. Think about it. Think about what I said here in terms of how you make decisions. Who are you consulting? How are you making decisions? Really realigning with decision-making based on you and your goals and your mission and the milestones you want to hit, not just this mysterious tenure and promotion criteria or whatever. So I hope that today's episode was inspiring to you. I will say here for my podcast listeners, if you're like, wow, I want to get in on Amplify, you can still, but you need to do it like right now because enrollment has already closed, but we have space. So on a case-by-case basis, we are looking at applications and letting people in. Officially, the program starts September 1. Like that's when you get access to all the materials and the syllabus and everything. But the drop dead deadline for joining is before our one-day virtual kickoff retreat, which happens on September 9th. So we need to have you enrolled by September 8th. That's the absolute last minute. We really need you enrolled by September 1st. So that means right now, right now. So if you have already applied and been accepted, find any one of the emails that you've gotten from us in the last 6 weeks or so and go ahead and enroll. If you need help, if you haven't applied yet, just send us a note. You can also message me on Facebook Messenger. I don't like Facebook, but I do like communicate with some people over Facebook Messenger. It's not something I would like, please don't all the time. But if it's right now about Amplify, you have permission to Facebook message me at Kathy Mazak. Okay? So, I would love to support you. I would love for us to help you do this career design work that I think will recession-proof your career. Also be checking your email because we are looking for institutional partners to help us deliver our programs to more women and non-binary professors because we want to change the culture of academia because that's what our company mission is. And we believe that we will do that by helping you. All right? Have such a great semester. If it's your first week of class, congratulations. Enjoy the excitement. And I'll talk to you on the next podcast. Bye. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.